but more importantly, it became a time that many organizations actually started to optimize their websites. Because even if you're using social media and ads, ultimately you need a web presence where that traffic actually arrives at, and then you're then able to communicate and provide the utility and the value proposition that your customers and your stakeholders expect. A little bit about myself, and the screen has just died. Is it coming back up? Yes, no? Shortly? Okay. There's a fairly long slide here, but the most important thing you need to know is that I'm an Arsenal supporter. So if there are any Manchester United people in the room, please raise up your hands. Are there any Man United people in the room? Yeah, this is the point where you leave the room. Okay? And I'm just saying this because I'm a passionate supporter. As you can see, the season is coming alive. We're ahead of you guys. But I just want to say that, yes, one of the important points on that slide with my bio data is that I've been supporting Arsenal since 1997 and continue to do so. And yes, we are going to Europe. So website optimization is the process of using controlled experimentation to improve your website's ability to drive your business goals, right? There are many, many websites out there, but even in Kenya, we find that many of them have not been fully optimized. And I don't mean particularly search engine optimization, which is where we tend to use that phrase of optimization, but is the site easy to use? Is it easy to navigate? Does it load quickly? Is it secure? And really, if you want to improve the website performance, you want to make sure that you experiment with different variations. You're testing. I think I heard Caroline using the phrase A/B testing. You're checking for conversions. You're trying to improve your search engine results. You're trying to generate more leads, better customer service, in-newsletter signups and so forth. So you really trying to say, fine, we have a website, but how do we actually get it to perform to a much higher standard or level than it has been performing to date? Sorry, I'm not familiar with this clicker. Next slide. Am I doing something wrong? So the best way to start is if you're going to optimize your website, you want to first of all start off with a technology audit, right? So you want to look at the accessibility. You want to see whether the backend systems are secure. Is your content management system up to date? You also want to audit your search engine optimization to make sure that this has been done well, meaning that you're getting a significant number of leads or maybe e-commerce transactions. And ultimately, you really want to make sure both the on-page and off-page metrics of your search engine optimization are up to par. You also want to use something called analytics. So analytics basically gives you insights around website performance. And typically we use a tool called Google Analytics that's 100% free. And again, if you're able to look at your analytics, you really start to see the story or the performance of your website from a very data-driven perspective. And you understand then where traffic is coming from, how people are consuming content on your website, which pages are the most popular. And also you start to understand the gaps that you might have where you need to improve performance. We also have the aspect of the user experience, what we like to call the look and feel of the website, but also how it works in terms of, how you click through and engage with various aspects of the content on the website. And typically, you want to create what you call your user personas. You want to understand who they are, the different scenarios in terms of how they might use your website, and really basically setting up the testing so that you can then maximize or improve performance. Another thing that we find that is very important, I think it comes back to the issue of content. And content is still king even on our website, because if you audit your content, is the style and tone of the content good in terms of the photography, the videos, and all the things that makes your website. So you need to audit it for quality, consistency, structure, and even tonality. And I've seen horror stories in the past where one website was built, but we had 5 different people creating the content and nobody sort of editing or ensuring that the content was done well. So again, auditing that to make sure it's working well. And if you look at the data, being able to see, for instance, whether the content is actually contributing or possibly harming your search engine optimization. Typically, when we look at what defines an effective website, we want to make sure, for instance, that it's socially integrated, because that is where a lot of the content engagement will happen. We want to make sure that it's a platform that acquires customers, so it's not just a brochure or look and feel site, but you're able to quantify on a month-to-month or even a weekly basis whether your website is generating actual sales. Also, the quality of the content is what is going to keep return traffic coming to your website. So are you updating it regularly? Is it of a high quality? Can you optimize it even further? And also making sure that your content is persona segmented, meaning that you want to make sure that the different types of stakeholders that are going to access that website can actually effectively use it, but more importantly, that you create unique journeys or experiences on your website for each segment. When it comes to creating a good website user experience, today, which is more or less standard practice, you need to make sure that it's responsive, meaning that it's designed to work on any screen. So whether you're using a mobile phone or using a smart TV or a tablet, your site presents itself in a good way. Number two, and why this is also important, is Google today uses what we call a mobile first index, meaning that they prioritize mobile experiences over traditional desktop experiences. And this has a big implication on search and optimization, because Google always wants to make sure that the user has a satisfying experience. The content should be dynamic. Again, Google will determine your ranking on the strength of the content, but also how frequently you update it. And the overall look and feel, or what we call the design and the user experience, should provide a very good looking website, meaning that it's visually compelling, but also when users are going through it and navigating through it, they should be able to get to content within 1 or 2 clicks at most. So making sure that it's not just pretty, but it's also very easy to navigate. Or like what we like to say in user experience, don't make me think. I don't think my clicker is working. So this is a classic example of what we mean when we say responsive, that whether using a smartphone, tablet, TV or laptop, the site automatically presents itself according to the screen. And why is this important, right? So these are some statistics, slightly out of date. Guys, we're not on the same slide. Yeah, so that is the sort of the numbers that we have for Kenya. So over 90% of our internet consumption happens on mobile devices, right? So when you look at the numbers, and these come from Communications Authority of Kenya, if you're not making sure your website is designed or optimized for a mobile experience, you're potentially missing out a lot. And not to mention that Google will prioritize websites that are mobile optimized or mobile responsive ahead of those that are not. So it's not just good practice for the end user, but it's also critical for ultimately how you get found online. Another aspect that's critical is personas. Like I mentioned earlier, we need to make sure that the website is designed for the different personas. One of the segments or industries that I think does this really well is the banking industry, because what they have is usually maybe 5, 6, 7 different types of products and services geared towards specific segments. So you'll find that in their website, they have the corporate, they have the SME, they have the individuals, they have diaspora. And again, when you sort of start to understand who your personas are, who are the people who represent your target audience, you can look at defining you need to articulate their values and beliefs, get to know your persona. Some people will even cut out, pictures of people and put them in the room so they can really get into the mindset of who this user is. Define the value they get from your organization, and more specifically from this website. Because remember, the website is built for them and not for you. So you really want to empathize and create something that's going to work for them. We give them a face and a name. You share those personas and you refine your personas over time. You also go through what we call the user experience design process, and ultimately it starts off with thinking about the structure of the website from a strategic standpoint. So that means coming up with a solid strategy. Why are you building this website? What do you want to achieve with it? And more importantly, what value will it bring to your organization? You then create what we call the functional specification, interaction design, information design, and ultimately the visual design. So the point here being that the look and feel, or the visual design, is the thing that happens at the very top. At the bottom, we sort of have our abstract strategy and we build it up until we have something solid. So the point here being, the closest analogy I can think of when I think about UX is like building a house. If you have a good blueprint and a good design, then you end up with a good house. So you always want to make sure that that is done properly. And then again, one of the devices that you'd use when you're building your website is something we call a site plan or site maps. And this is sort of like a flow chart which gives us a high-level view of all the different sections and pages of the website. The point here, again, is that you want to map it out. You want to think about how this relates to your personas. You want to create pathways that are easy to use and navigate, and ultimately create a user experience that's satisfying. We also have what we call wireframes, and wireframes are designed to depict a specific page within the website. And more importantly, when you look at this, you can see there's the main navigation. You can see the 2 boxes which represents the photos, a selector button on the left, and then you have where you have the Latin is the copy. So the idea is that using this approach with wireframes and also what we call grayscale prototypes, you're able to then really articulate and sort of break down the structure to a very fine level so that when the building actually begins, it has a completely good user experience. Also critical is, according to Google, I'm just going to emphasize this point, you want to make sure that you use what they call the mobile-friendly test. And there are many tools out there that let you do this, but it's important to use the Google one because that means that you're using the criteria to determine whether or not your website is actually mobile responsive or mobile optimized. And again, you put in your URL in there, you punch it in, and what you get back usually is not just it telling you whether it is mobile responsive or not, but more importantly, it gives you a series of any deficiencies that you might have. And from that checklist, usually you can take that back to your developer or your team and be able to then further refine and optimize your website. Another thing that's critical with website optimization is something that we call conversion rate optimization. And this is really trying to increase the percentage of users who perform a desired action in your website. So that could be anything from, an e-commerce purchase, downloading a document, signing up for your newsletter. But you want to sort of figure out when people come to the website and they're consuming or accessing content, what are the deterrents or the things that could be stopping them from moving to the next step? And usually we use things like A/B testing and other sort of technologies to sort of identify where the deficiencies exist and then how best to close the gap. So this is a classic example of a site or a page that has been somewhat optimized for conversion. And you can see that there's a very clear value proposition at the top, which is watch it live in Brazil. There's a clear call to action. And then lastly, there's a lead generation form that somebody's able to fill so that, in this case, the customer service team or the sales team can get in touch with them. The whole point, again, with conversion rate optimization is really to strip out any extraneous content, focus on a key objective, and then funnel the user to that particular conversion objective. You also want to consider using tools like this Google Optimize, which comes free with Google Analytics, and it's able to then analyze and help you optimize that user experience and that conversion rate optimization within your website. So you're able to run various tests, you're able to do various variations of pages, and then you're able to then determine what's working and not working for you. Then, of course, there's search engine optimization, which ultimately is about getting more organic traffic to your website without having to pay for ads. It's also about adding unique content. I'd say probably the most important thing that you need to think about is the content you actually put on your website. This is the thing I think that Google is looking at the most. And again, you want to make sure that you're easily found, but also you want to make sure that the ranking of the site is critically pretty high. And typically when it comes to the traffic sources, we look at everything from organic. You have referral links, which are websites coming from other links coming from other websites. There's social links, or what we call social signals. There's the paid ads when you use Google, and then there's also direct, where people just actually come directly to your website without even using a search tool because they know what the URL or the website address is. And to achieve this effectively, you need to have a solid content strategy, so high quality, regularly updated content that is predicated on who is your target audience or your target personas. There's the social media, which is the links back, so when people start sharing content on social platforms, it gives a signal back to Google to give you a good ranking. And then also inbound links, or what we call backlinks. So making sure that you're getting as many backlinks as possible from authoritative websites such as the media companies that we saw earlier, where if Nation, if Standard and others link back to you, then that potentially will improve your overall traffic. And when it comes to search engine optimization, we often talk about two criteria. There's what we call on-page SEO and off-page SEO. So on-page is what you do on the website, and then off-page is what you do on other parts of the internet to improve your overall SEO. It is a bit like rocket science, to be honest, but if you do this right, then the idea is that it's a continuous process of iteration, and you keep improving it and changing it and getting it to a higher standard over time. Typically in the methodology, there's the analysis and strategy, so you sort of, again, come back to analyzing where you are and thinking about what you need to improve. You do analyze your keywords and your choice of keywords that are going to improve your overall searchability on Google. Accessibility and indexing, because again, you need to make sure that when it comes to what we call the crawler, that's going to pick up all your pages and the content on them to rank them, that is all done properly and there are no things that are not done well in that respect. We look at ranking factors to see how to ensure that we have better ranking and indexing. And then also we do a competitive analysis where you're able to use various tools to go out there and see how you're ranking relative to your competitors, see where the gaps exist and how you can improve, and then also implement a typical implementation timeline. And this usually is anywhere from a month to 2 to do it quite effectively. And why does it matter, right? So the research basically says that if you rank number 1 for some keywords, then you get automatically around 30% of the click traffic. If you're in the first 5 positions, then you share with the other 4 guys 70% of the traffic. If you are in the first 10 positions on page 1 of that particular search results page, then 90% of those clicks go to the first 10 of that particular page. So what that means is that if you're on page 2, then you're fighting for the remaining 10% of all that traffic, plus the other pages below that. So basically, being in the top 5, or preferably being number 1, is where you want to be when it comes to SEO. There's also the element of e-commerce integration. Again, this is something that we saw really accelerating during the pandemic. So that is really having a checkout system. You want to have what we call a secure server. And this is where you have something called the SSLs, which secures the connection between your website and anyone who's paying for your products or services. You also need a payment processing, and this is where you work with companies like Cellulant, who were here yesterday, companies like Pesapal, who actually do the payment processing, and then the fulfillment, which is getting the product from point A to point B. And this is where you might do it yourself, or you work with a company like Sendy or DHL to actually take a product from your warehouse or your office to the end customer. To do this effectively, typically you want to do a good needs analysis. You want to also make sure that in Kenya you are able to accept both mobile money and credit card payments, connect with the third-party systems for payments, and then also install an SSL certificate which makes the transaction secure. And then also with the fulfillment component, you want to make sure that the product can be delivered in a timely manner to your customers. So if you are a restaurant delivering food, what sort of system are you going to build in place so that, within 40 minutes your customer has their meal? If you're selling more of a standard product, can you get it to them within 48 hours, maybe anywhere in Kenya? So again, the logistics piece is critical because that is really where the experience happens when the customer actually gets the product from you. Another element that is also critical and something that is now supported by most of the industry is something called accelerated mobile pages. And this is a technology that came out about maybe 5 years ago from Google and supported by a whole consortia. And what it does is that it makes sure that your web pages load instantly. They've done the science, and if your page takes more than 5 seconds, then many of your potential customers just take off. So within 1 second, if you install this technology in your website, basically your site loads instantly on a mobile device. And it's one of the key conversion rate optimization features that you can install in your website optimization. Also the Google Maps platform, because again, we've gone into a very digital culture now. People being able to find you and locate you is critical. So basically the Google Maps platform allows you to then embed your maps into your website. If you've got various branches and locations, you can do the same, put the pins there. But the beautiful thing again is you're making it easier and more practical for customers to find you. We also have the element of live chat. Again, during the pandemic, people really went into this in a big way. And from the data we saw with many of our customers, customers are really engaging via live chat. And in particular, we noticed that businesses that serve a large base of customers in the diaspora, live chat becomes like a lifeline. A lot of sales are consummated during those live chat sessions. But basically, when you look at the data, it's basically telling us that studies have shown that live chat contributes 30% to conversion rates. All right, so it's not just a fancy feature, it's something that can actually generate more business. And again, there's no excuse not to have it. You have platforms like Talk2, which are completely free for the basic option, so anyone can do this on their website. Another key feature is that you need to have your SSL certificates, which secure not just the transactions, but also the information moving from your website to your users. And this is particularly critical because if you look at the data, since 2018, Chrome has been putting a message at the top that says not secure. And this is two issues. One is obviously the security when transactions and all are happening, but also users will not take you very seriously if they see this not secure thing at the top. You'd be shocked how many websites in Kenya don't have SSL certificates. But the main point and why I put stat counter there is that Chrome is the #1 browser in the country, and 67% of browser traffic comes through Chrome. So if you don't have an SSL certificate, they're getting that message saying not secure. And that could be massively compromising your sales. Again, when it comes to SSL, if you can't afford to necessarily buy a paid one, you have tools like Let's Encrypt, which are 100% free, and you can then have that little padlock at the top. You also have Zero SSL, which also costs you nothing. There are also paid versions from companies like Sectigo, VeriSign, and others. And again, depending on the nature of your business, you can obviously go for a high-end SSL certificate. Of course, Google Analytics, very critical. This is a tool that really tells you what's happening on your website. And it's a sort of tool that you can also automate so that you get reports on a daily basis if you want, or weekly. And it really starts to tell you whether your optimizations are working or not, whether it's from SEO, whether it's loading time of your pages, whether it's through backlinks. All those insights typically will be available to you from here. And then there's obviously the website hosting. Where your site is hosted is also critical. Is it secure? Is it scalable? Is it available? Is it extensible? So as your site grows and changes, if tomorrow you wake up, you want to do e-commerce, can you support that? Is it ensuring that your site loads quickly? Because that's a key factor to performance. But also more importantly, is it secure? Because today, again, a lot of websites are getting hacked. A lot of malware is being spread through websites. So you want to make sure that, when you vet out your website hosting, is it up to par? Another key criteria for website performance is something called a CDN. And a CDN basically gives you the ability to speed up the delivery of your website to your stakeholders globally. So basically what it does is that it basically creates a copy of your website, and if anyone is trying to hit your website from anywhere in that network, then it'll deliver it to the server that's closest to them. So again, this is one of the ways that you can improve performance, but also a CDN can be a way of improving the security of your website through something called the denial of service or DDoS attacks. So again, it becomes a way of really protecting your website, and the platform that you can use for that is called Cloudflare. I don't know why my clicker is not working. So Cloudflare also has a free CDN, and if you wanted to install this in your website, you can also do that to improve the delivery of your content online. Again, speed is critical, both for SEO and customer experience. You can always run your website through the Google's Page Speed Insights test, which is free, and that will give you a clear indication of how fast your website is loading. So other website optimization tasks, you want to look at content management. That is creating, repurposing, and publishing of your content on a regular basis. Overall performance management to measure, monitor, and optimize on your performance, and also make sure you have clear KPIs. The hosting of your website is something you also need to be paying attention to make sure that infrastructure is delivering. Security, because again, you need to make sure that you're updating, things like your plugins, the core files for your content management system, making sure that ports that could be open are secured, and also just basically quality assurance to avoid any issues. Next slide. So pitfalls, what goes wrong? Number one, when you're optimizing, do you have a clear goal, right? So if you've gotten the benchmarks and you understand where the problems are, you need to, first of all, make sure that you have clear goals, and as a team or as an organization, agree on what those are. Number two, you need to know where you are. So start to benchmark, look at your current performance, see what you need to fix. Undervaluing the importance of contextually relevant content. Again, you're not going to rank well for SEO or even just be found easily if you're not really looking at how your content is sort of structured and sort of placed on your website. The target audiences, or rather the personas, are you building the website and optimizing it for specific personas? If you begin with the end in mind, meaning that you focus on the end user and who you expect to use the website, then you should ideally end up with the right content, the right structure, and so forth. So always, always, always begin from the perspective of the customer or in the intended target audience. SEO or search engine optimization does not happen at the end of the project, it happens at the very beginning. So you start to optimize for the keywords at the beginning. That means you've done your brainstorming, you've understood where you want to be found for, so that you start to structure and build. All these things are sort of in the plan, not at the end, but rather at the beginning. It's not an afterthought. And of course, if you're missing key features like not being mobile responsive or secure, or the website is not fast to load, all of these things basically will make things like Google de-rank you. Then you want to make sure that all those things are covered, and you run the tests to validate that you are indeed compatible or compliant. And basically that's it. Thank you very much. Lunch is served. Any questions? Is there a microphone there? Okay. Apparently I still have 5 minutes, so I guess we have 5 minutes to go.
Thank you for that great presentation. One question, what are the pros and cons of using templates to build your website versus coded HTML? What would you recommend from where you sit? Yeah.
Okay, that's a great question. I'm guessing you're a developer, right? Or,
Not really, but
okay, but you have a sense of what goes on.
yeah, yeah.
So if I talk as a, okay, if I talk as somebody who's been in this for a long time, you know, over 20 years now, templates, very fast to use, very easy to use, off the shelf. You can customize them to a certain extent, but when it comes to fine-tuning a template that has been already pre-built, there's limitations to how much optimization you can do. And quite often, when you want to make key changes to the actual code, how it was built and so forth, there are going to be things that are going to break, all right? In fact, any professional web developer, you give him a template, they get very upset because they are restricted in what they can do with it. So fine, you go to, you know, Theme Forest, you buy it for $40, $50, you deploy within a day or two, great. But long term, it'll be very hard to sustain or maintain typically a template-driven website. On the other hand, when it's custom built from the ground up, it's going to cost more money, but it is finely tuned. The code is not bulky. The way it has been built means it's going to load quickly because it's almost like you're only putting in what you need versus using a template where you're trying to kind of make it work the way you want it to work. Because often when a template is built, it's built to the way that it's going to serve different use cases, whether somebody wants to do e-commerce or somebody wants to do a gallery, brochure, website. It's trying to do everything. So the code is not optimized, it's not clean, and it tends to be a bit bulky, meaning that even the loading time is going to get affected. So when you have it custom built, the caveat is it's going to usually cost you more, but it's going to be super slick and super fast, assuming it's done properly. Template means you can deliver and achieve quickly, but it's always going to be harder to optimize over the long term.
Hello, thank you. Amazing presentation, but I feel it had to be kind of rushed, so I was asking for where I can get that slide, if possible.
Okay. I believe this will be shared. In fact, it's already with the Social Media Week team.
Okay.
So presumably at some point during the conference or after, it'll probably be available for download if you want to look at it.
Thank you.
Guys are hungry, huh?
Okay, sorry for keeping everyone here, but just a quick one. Other than compelling or attractive content, what else can I do for my website to build loyal people, like people to keep coming back and reading the content, other than if I have, like, I feel like I already have compelling content, but I want to do other things just to keep people coming back to the website?
One of the recommendations, and again, it depends on how you look at your website, right? Even a few years ago, I remember attending a Google webinar, a Google workshop, and they were so categorical to us that if you want to get more traffic and also improve your SEO, one of the easiest tricks is, can you make sure that at least every week you have one blog post, right? So if you create, again, based on the target audience or the personas, every day or every week, you're creating at least one piece of content, could be 3-4 paragraphs, speaking to a specific issue or pain point that your target audience would find addressed by that content, then that becomes a way of generating that repeat traffic. So I find that really the websites that generally think of themselves almost like a newspaper or a form of media unto themselves are the ones who are able to then publish content regularly, which then in turn generates that repeat traffic. Not to mention the improvement in SEO in general. So going back to what was said earlier, you know, the king is dead, long live the king. I think in the context of content, the more content you publish, the more regularly you publish it, and then more importantly, target it to your specific target audience segments, the more likely your website is going to really perform well. And most guys don't have the discipline. Most websites I see around don't generally update their content. It's just about us, who we are, what we do, etc. And then they don't have a blog that's in the website itself that potentially becomes that place where additional pages are generated every so often. So that would be my recommendation.
Hi, I'm Gladys from Equity Bank. So I have just one question. Videos are increasingly becoming very popular. So what tips do you have for increasing your SEO on videos? Because I know SEO is a bit text-based. So what would you recommend?
So I didn't get the first part of the question.
The videos are increasingly being very popular right now. So what tips do you have to increase SEO on videos? Because I know SEO is a bit text-based. So yeah.
Well, one of the things you can do is if you have a YouTube channel, then you could embed the video content into your website. But inherently also YouTube is the world's second largest search engine after Google itself. So if you look at SEO purely without necessarily designating it just to the website, then just like I recommended to the young gentleman there that, you know, the more video content you create and you put in the right keywords and tag it, and then also embed it into your social media and your website, then the higher the probability of engaging the audiences. And again, tomorrow I'll be giving a masterclass on digital, and there'll be something about content marketing. But I think in the modern context of a website, it should be probably one of your most powerful content marketing platforms, meaning that, you know, anything you create around the internet, make sure you always plug it into your website as well, because then it becomes part of that, even leveraging that video aspect of SEO. No questions. I can see now that our 5 minutes have run out. If there's any last question, happy to take it, but if not, thank you very much.
Good afternoon. We are now on a lunch break. The next session will begin at 2:30 p.m.